have stories. Every single one of us. From the highest of the high to the lowest of the low, we all have stories. Exploring the world for the greatest stories of all time.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Aron O'Dowd Show.
The Aron O'Dowd Show. Our soul is the screen upon which we project our dreams. What's your story?
Hello and welcome on today's amazing show of the Aron O'Dowd Show. We have another incredible guest as always. From farming to funding to helping, the farmer get what they want to do in their project. His name is Eamonn Walsh, and this guy is an amazing individual. Hello and welcome to the show, Eamonn. How are you doing?
Thanks very much, Aaron. I'm great. How are you?
Good. You help people get funded and understand, but where did this concept of, look out for your fellow man?
That's a good question. Where did it come from? I mean, if you wanted to go really deep into it, it's familial for me. I mean, it comes from family. For me, we come from a farming background, west of Ireland. We have a small farm in the west of Ireland that has been there. We can trace it back, over 100 years. We can trace it back to, I think it's the 1840s. We know it's been there longer than that. It was the legacy, and any generational farmers that are kind of watching this or tuning in will I think hear this. It's that legacy that has secured the family for generations, and it's also that burden of that legacy, because it's farming. Farming has a lot of challenges at the moment, and there's a lot of pressure on family farms and generational farms and farmers. That responsibility of the legacy that they've been entrusted with, making sure that that legacy stays intact. And in my family, we've been very fortunate. Every generation up to now has expanded the holdings, has expanded the farm and built on the farm, and expanded the land bank and all that good stuff. And there's a lot of pressure for farmers that are coming into that environment where, there are, challenges in today's world that have never existed before. You know what I mean? And they're looking at particularly any of those kind of farmers with children of their own. Is there going to be a farm for them to inherit? Are they going to be in a position to pass on the legacy the way that their parents did to them and their grandparents before, and so on and so forth? And I mean, the big question I think that burns in a lot of the back of our minds around this is this family legacy that has been the heart of the family and has sustained the family and has secured the family for, in our case, 100 years plus. Is that legacy going to die with me? That's the question I think that burns in a lot of people's minds. So that's kind of where the journey started, analyzing what was going on in the world in terms of agriculture, grants, technology, all kind of different things that were going on. And where we've kind of positioned ourselves or cemented ourselves in a place of where we can serve is on the side of funding and getting projects funded for agricultural leaders and these agricultural farming families.
Tell us about you. You grew up in a farming background?
Yeah, so we'd have dry stock. We would just breed for the genetics, really. Aberdeen Angus. We've done a little bit of Hereford as well. Tried making the black Herefords at one point. That didn't go well. But my father was probably the first generation that kind of ran into this challenge. He had a plant hire business as well, which was very successful and all the rest of it during the boom times in Ireland with the construction boom and all the rest of it. And we also had the farm. So we grew up around animals, we grew up around ditches, we grew up around farms. Now our land is very mountainous land, so it's a lot of people might be surprised that we wouldn't have like sheep or goats or things like that, but no, it was cattle. But if you look back, it's interesting to look back at the family tree. I mean, we have a small herd of cattle, but I look at some of the fields today, and to hear my father talking about the times he ploughed those fields with a draft horse, and I'm looking at these fields and go, you grew crops in that? Like you wouldn't even dream of it today, in today's world. but this was agriculture in his early years, and in his father's time and his grandfather's time, they were mixed farms, and it's just it's an amazing way to grow up, in the sense of I think anyone that's grown up in that environment, some people might call it work ethic, that we'd have a great work ethic. It's not work ethic. It's the stakes are incredibly high when you grow up in that environment. I mean, it's and I don't mean to sound, or I'm not trying to be dramatic, but a lot of the time it's typically life or death are the stakes. You know what I mean? For particularly if you have animals in that, um, if you don't if you've got a cow that's calving and the cow gets into trouble and you're not there and you're not on the ball to watch that cow and to look after things, that you're good chance you're going to lose both, right? And it's I know in my grandfather's time and in the earlier years of my father's time, even for those guys, it was very much life or death. If the farm wasn't successful, they were hungry, you know. The stakes were incredibly high. So I would say farmers are probably the original entrepreneurs, right? I call them agripreneurs, right? So I would say they're the originals of the entrepreneurs, in the sense of um they don't back down. There's no giving up. There's no such thing as, well, we can't do that, or there's no such thing as failure. There's no such thing as it can't be done, or we got it wrong. It has to be done, or a living thing is going to die, you know? And that living thing historically was what secured the house. It was what secured the family. It was the livestock, or it was the crop out in the field. Something is going to die if we don't do it. So we cannot accept not doing it. We cannot accept that it cannot be done, right? We cannot accept that we messed it up. If we mess it up, we just do it again, right? We just start again and we get it done, right? So that's very much the environment that I grew up in. Yeah.
And you went to the flat, and anyone listening that's not in Ireland, flat is a traditional music and dance festival. But tell us about how you got into that.
Yeah, so the Flahes were great fun. So we're a musical family as well, for on top of everything else. So I don't really remember a time in my life when I wasn't playing music. For anyone that's tuning in that's not from Ireland, we have a phenomenal culture and heritage here around music, traditional Irish music, and the Flacheols would be the local, regional, and national competitions. Where I come from, the town closest to where we live, that small little town called Foxford in the west of Ireland, a town of heroes, by the way. We gave birth to the man that liberated an entire country in South America, right? So we're a great little town to visit, but we have a very, very strong music scene in the town. It's only a town of about 2,000 people, right? And the amount of bands and the amount of music that comes out of that town is amazing. I mean, when you grow up in Foxford, you're doing one of two things, if not both, right? You're either playing for Moy Davits, the local GAA team, right? And again, for anyone that's tuning in from outside of Ireland, that's Gaelic Athletics Association. It's the national sport, football and hurling, national sports here. So you're either playing for Moy Davits or you're playing music. It's as simple as that. You're in the local Cayley band. I mean, we formed our first band. I was in the Cayley bands from a very young age. Played piano from a very, very young age. Played drums from a young age. And you find yourself immersed in this environment. We were probably 12 or 13, me and my friends, when we put together our own first little band, and we'd go around to the different pubs and playing in different pubs, and we'd go to the Battle of the Bands were a big thing in that day as well, where you'd go and young bands would compete against each other, playing short little sets. And later on in life, we would have toured Ireland, we would have toured Europe, with different bands and stuff like that. And I actually had an events company for a while, that spun out of all that. But the Flas were really the heart of it all, where it all started. You were brought up, and you were brought up to be the best performer, the best musician you could possibly be, and you went to the Flacheols to prove it, right? That's what you did. So my town is a little bit like, now again, for anyone outside of Ireland that won't get this, but when they talk about Kerry County Kerry and football, they say you need to be careful when you're getting your change at the till because you might get an All-Ireland football medal in your change, right? Foxford is a little bit like that on the music scene in terms of the Flacheol, right? If you go to Foxford, you need to be careful at the till because you might get an All-Ireland Fla medal in your change, right? So, you know, we went to those competitions to prove that we were the best of the best, and in our day in the Cayley bands, our big competitor was the Ennis Cayley band. Locally, it was another town over from us, Castlebar, and nationally, it was the Ennis Cayley band. And yeah, the rivalries were deep. It was funny, you know, the rivalries were real deep, right? Even to this day, if someone said to me, "Oh, you know, I played for the Ennis Cayley band," I'd be, "Oh." So yeah, that's the music side. Yeah, but we yeah, that we had a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
And what inspired you to be in it? Inspired the culture and the heritage of the town?
Um, what inspired me to be in it? Well, I remember I always we were put into music from a young age, right? And that was just the way it was. We were put into music from a young age. And I remember several times I was a big fan of Pokemon, you know, the Pokemon show.
Oh, yeah, I
I
grew up
was
watching playing Pokemon too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was Pokemon. I think it was every Wednesday. I used to have a music lesson at whatever time the music lesson was at, and I used to I threw a tantrum when I was really young, like 5 or 6 or something, and I'd throw a tantrum every time I had to go to this because Pokemon was on at the same time, you know. But we were very much put into music. I never had any interest in competing. I never had any interest in performing. I liked playing. I liked to play music, you know. Never had much interest in any of the rest of it until my sister qualified for the All Irelands. I was maybe 12 or 11 or 12, in around something in around that age, right? And my sister had been competing for a few years, and you know she'd get out of county level and she'd get to provincial or whatever. And this year she qualified for the All Irelands. It was her first year qualifying for the All Irelands. And if you picture it, at the locals and regionals, right, it's normally done in a school, right? So it's done in the summertime when you're off school, and then you have to go to a school which you're meant to be off from for the summer. You're meant to be out playing, right, and doing whatever you're doing. And every year I was being dragged to these, going, I have to go to a bloody school, and I'm meant to be on. And you just go into a classroom, and you know there'd be people playing, and there'd be adjudicators listening, and that's how the competitions work at the local and kind of regional levels. But when you get to the national levels, they're in auditoriums, they're in venues. There's big sound systems, there's big lighting rigs. It's real, like it's a different kettle of fish. And I remember I had my Game Boy and I brought my Game Boy down to play games to entertain myself for the few days that we were in Tipperary, in Clonmel and Tipperary for the All Ireland Fla. And I don't think I turned it on once I saw the spectacle of what the competition was at the national levels. And I was just enthralled by it. It was staged lights, it was big, you know. And I remember coming home from that Flacheol and I said in the back of the car, I'm going to bring us to the All Irelands next year. And I would say from that day to the All Ireland the following year, you could probably count on my fingers how many days I didn't play a piano, you know. It was just 365 days of not just our own piano. If I passed a piano anywhere, if I was in school, school piano; at home, our own piano; if I was in a friend's house, I had a few friends that played piano, I was playing their pianos. Wherever I was, if there was a piano, I was playing it. And I genuinely think you could probably count on my fingers how many days I didn't play a piano for that year. And the following year, I did bring us to the All Irelands. And every year after that, for a number of years, I was in competing at All Ireland level, and we won medals and all the rest of it. Um, and then I went on, that led me on to, you know, a love of the stage, and I started performing in various different bands. And we did that, and we did that in at various different levels. We played festivals, we played arenas, we played concerts, we toured Europe. I think the largest crowd we played to in Europe was something like 10,000 people, which was phenomenal. In That was in Estonia. Um, so yeah, we did a lot. And then I went behind the curtain, kind of said, okay, that's enough of that. And I went behind the curtain and I started putting on our own events, and we ran a lot of concerts up and down the country. But the original inspiration was originally it was just a love of playing music. You know, I had no interest in any of it. until I saw what it was, because my concept of it was going to play in a classroom during my summer holidays, which I didn't want to do, right? But when I actually saw a venue and I actually saw, oh wow, we can do this, it was okay, I want a piece of that, you know.
And throughout your life, this I'll show you I'm heading to the flaw next year. Is that who Eamonn Walsh is? If we could go deep into his character.
Oh, very much so, yeah, very much so. And again, that comes back to the upbringing. As I said, there's no such thing there's no such thing as it can't be done. There's no such thing as failure. There's no, like, it just it's not that we deny it, it's just it doesn't exist, right? There was never a concept. I never had a concept. I was probably in my 20s before I kind of got my head around this idea of what failure is, right? And what other people call failure. You know, I mean, we built, me and my friends, we built several devices and different things and bits and pieces down through the years, from drug dispensers for people on medications to jet engines, right? Friend of mine and a few of us gave him a hand, built a beach buggy. We would have done a lot with cars, doing different projects on cars and things like that. And a lot of the time, we hadn't a clue what we were doing. I mean, building a jet engine, not a clue what we were doing. We actually nearly burnt down my father's shed, and we actually, joking aside, we actually nearly got a few people killed, ourselves included. But there was a lot of learning in that. Like, that wasn't failure, because guess what we did the next day? We went back at it again, and we were testing our jet engine again and trying to get our jet engine running. And we were videoing the whole thing, and we analyzed the video, and we realized what we did wrong. And we said, okay, cool. Pity we didn't know someone that knew that could have told us, but hey, we're learning, right? So it was never a case of this is what I mean when I say failure just didn't exist. What do you mean failure? No, you've just learned something. You didn't fail. You just go again, you know? So whether maybe we're just stubborn, Aaron, I don't know. Maybe we're just really stubborn. It could be that.
You you never know, but Genie, from cars to buggies to jet engines to joyriding, you seem like a wild character, Eamon, you know?
I don't know if I ever would have called myself wild. No, I probably was wild, you know. I'd say more kind of free, you know, free to think, free to do. Um, no one ever tried to, well, very few people ever tried to, um, very few people tried to cage me in terms of, if I wanted to do something, I was, but as long as I wasn't putting myself or anyone else at harm, I was generally let do it, you know. Um, I remember one day my mother I was very young, right? But this is sometime I don't even know what age I was. I was really young. But this just goes to show how an experience can cement in a memory, right? She was taking a casserole out of the oven, you know. And I was a babe. I was literally a babe, like, you know, barely walking, I'd say, or not walking that long. And I went to touch it. And I remember my mother saying, no, no, hot, hot, don't touch, hot. But she didn't stop me from touching it. She told me, and I went and I touched it, and I finger came back, and I cried, and all the rest of it. And we got the hot water and put the hot water, or the cold water, sorry, I should say. You know, we did all that. I wasn't like second degree burns or anything like that. But that was always me, right? Yeah, for a very long time, I had to have the experience to gain the learning from it, right? You could tell me certain things, but in certain cases, I had to go and experience it for myself, and I was let, you know, from even that very young age. That will burn. That's hot. It's just come out of the oven. Well, what do you mean? I didn't know what hot meant. You know, I knew my mother was telling me not to touch it, right? I knew that, but I didn't know what hot was. You know, but I can tell you, as soon as I touched it, I knew what hot was, and then I understood why she was telling me not to touch it. But that was very much me, and I was let do that, you know. So
And in letting you explore and find out the people that can help you, do you feel the farming background you grew up gave you the entrepreneurial spirit that you have today?
yeah, I think that's very much where it comes from. I think that the family, we've had the plant hire business, and I've done various other things. Obviously, music and events was a big part of my life, and I've done various different things in sales. I've done various different things in software systems, process, technology, all different things like that. And now it's funny, I'm coming full circle back to it, back to the roots and the agriculture and the farming and everything else. But I do think that it stems from that farming mindset. That farming, it's not a mindset. It isn't a mindset. It's a reality. So I think it very much comes from that reality that my ancestors lived in, that's been handed down from generation to generation, where we're privileged. You could look at it from this point of view, right? That we're privileged, that we have the awareness that failure is a made up concept, right? Um, that just is a privilege, and I don't know how to explain it, but I was brought up with this awareness, and it comes from generations of this awareness, that failure is a made up concept. And if it isn't a made up concept, then failure ultimately means death, right? Um, and again, that's back to go back a couple of generations in our family, and those were the stakes, you know. I know during the 1840s, during the famine times here, when things weren't well, um, you know, that was very much the reality. And for quite a number of years after that, that was very much the reality. You had two options. You figured it out, or you and your family died, you know. And that runs very deep in our family.
What, you know, what brought you into agriculture, because and investing and getting funded, because you've dabbled in so many things throughout your life, and you said it's back to the roots of the farming background you grew up, but what brought you to investing and get funded in farming?
Well, I was always fascinated by finance. I was always fascinated by money, how it works. Um, Money is a means. It's a means of exchange. It's a means of movement. It's a means of fluidity. It's or liquidity, if you want to use the correct financial term, right? But I call it grease, right? I've always kind of looked at money as grease, and if we take it to my father's business with the plant tire and the machines and that, if the machines were not greased, they just wouldn't move. Simple as that, right? And no amount of force could get them to move if they weren't greased correctly, or they'd break before they'd move, if they weren't greased up correctly. So that concept, is what I kind of applied to money and finance and everything else. It's just grease, right? Um, and I suppose when I started to look at the agricultural space and see what people were doing and seeing what projects they were trying to develop, and people that were trying to make a positive impact and secure the futures and everything else, if you think of the projects that they're looking to get funded as the machine, right, it came fairly apparent early on that they didn't actually have a machine, right? Or if they had, it wasn't assembled, it was on bits in the yard, right? And they were bringing an investor in going, grease my machine. And the investor is looking around going, where's this machine? Right? Or the investor is going, yeah, fine, but your machine is in 1,000 bits on the floor. So when you've got your machine assembled, come get me, and I'll bring some grease, and we'll grease up the machine. So I saw this big gap, and the way that's communicated from investor to potential borrower, or the project lead, and the other way around, the way those two entities communicate with each other, I noticed they were speaking two very different languages, right? They were both speaking, let's say, English. I'm not talking about English, Spanish, Mandarin, whatever, right? I speak English, so I predominantly end up dealing with people that speak English. So they were both speaking English, right? But language is just words, and words are just noises that we make, that we assign value and meaning to. So the first bit is, right, they were both using words, as in making noises, that the other one had no value or meaning for whatsoever, right? As in terms that meant nothing to them, words and noises that meant nothing to them. Okay. And the second piece was they were also using words and using language, right? And making noises that they both had a value and meaning for, but their values and meanings were very, very different for that noise. And that more often than not creates conflict, right? So big gap between the two sides. And that's where I went, if we can fix this problem, right? If we can help these people build their machine, build out their project to a point where they have a machine that's ready to be greased, if we can help them assemble it, and if we can help them with the communication piece, right? Around getting the synergy in the communication so that everyone's talking the same language, we can help a lot. We can get a lot of these projects funded, right? Um, and that's kind of where it came from. I was in the privileged position where I was kind of removed from it all in a sense, and could see it from both sides, and I understood both sides. Um, and I knew what both sides, and I had a decent understanding of the value and meaning that both were, and I was listening to these conversations and going, no, that's not what they meant, or that's not what was, that wasn't the intention. So it's that gap. It's that gap that I've seen, and I can go, well, we can fix that. And when we fix that, the world is going to be a much, much better place. A lot of these projects are going to get funded. Now it's hard work, right? It's hard work. And I will say there are an awful lot of people out there. You're talking across all industries, you're talking like less than 3% of projects get funded, right? And the other 97, the most consistent reasons they don't get funded, right, is because they're not willing to accept that they don't have a project, that all they have is a vision. They're just not willing to accept that. Okay. They're not willing to accept that the machine is a pile of parts on the ground and that they need to go and assemble it, right? They think someone should do that for them. Okay. Um, so that's the first thing. They don't accept that, or they have a massively inflated sense of entitlement, right? Around, they just think because they're aware that they don't have a project, they're aware that all they have is an idea, and they think someone should invest in their idea. And lenders and investors do not invest in ideas. They invest in well prepared, well structured projects. But if we can, within that 3%, right, or within the 97%, I should say, there, I can see another few percent that's not getting funded because of this gap that just needs to be bridged. So that's why, that's kind of why we've moved into that area, and that's, it's taken us a long time. I mean, from when we started this whole thing originally, it's taken us a lot of work, a lot of communication, a lot of dialogue, a lot of collaboration as well, a hell of a lot of collaboration with various other different groups and people to get this picture, even just to get this picture, never mind to actually figure out how we're going to solve the problem. Just to get the picture was probably a year's work, you know.
Wow, that's incredible. Do you feel it's mindset that prevents people getting invested, or is it just they can't differentiate between this is a project or a vision?
It's a bit of both. So some people lack the awareness, right? That they they genuinely and authentically think that they have a project. Okay. They lack the awareness that they don't. They lack the awareness of what a project really looks like and what it really is. And it's like I always say, it's like, how do you ride a bike before you know how to ride a bike? You know, if you don't know, you don't know, right? So it's not a criticism, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't know, you don't know. So some people just don't have the awareness. So that's the first thing that we're always looking to provide. And the awareness is, for anyone that might be listening to this, right, that actually is on that journey, right? The awareness is, right, if you're out there in the market looking for funding and you have knocked on, 100 doors, 200 doors looking for investment, and you're getting nowhere, and it seems like an endless cycle of investor meetings and they're just going nowhere, right? The awareness you need to get there is that you don't have a project, right? You don't have an investable project, because if it was investable and you've knocked on that many doors, guess what? Someone would have put money your way, right? Or there'd be something in the works, right? There would be something in the works, okay? You mightn't have money in the bank, but there'd be something in the works, right? There'd be a deal being structured or something. That's the awareness you have to get. So once you get that awareness, it kind of goes one of two ways. They either get that awareness and they go, oh my God, yeah, this is brilliant. We need to solve this problem. Now I know what I need to do. And those guys get into gear and I mean, off they go, right? Um, well, then you have the people that gain the awareness and accept it. But again, this is coming back into, I suppose, this inflated sense of entitlement that, well, I mean, yeah, I'll do all that when I get my investment. Then you're never going to get your investment, right? Nobody's going to invest in you to assemble your machine, you know. No one's going to invest in you to turn your vision into a project. You have to do that bit on your own, right? But there are a cohort of people within the spectrum that just think that it should be just given to them, right? Um, and then you have the people, and this I think is coming into more of the mindset piece, and I might be borrowing a little bit of mutual friend of our Lee Tony Ware's language here when he talks a lot about why would you set your mind, you know? And I think that's what happens with another cohort of people in that, where they get stuck in a mindset, as in their mind is set. And the challenge there is, and we can do nothing to help those people, really and truly, we cannot, there's nothing we can do to help those people, because their mind is so set on this project that isn't a project, that they'll never accept that it's not a project, you know, that it's only a vision, that it needs work. Now, don't get me wrong, we also do come across projects that are, they are projects, visions that are projects, and it might be just they're knocking on the wrong doors. It might be just they're looking in the wrong place. It could be a lot of it. A lot of it can be the communication framework that they're using. Ego plays a big role in it as well. I don't know how many projects I've seen go south, go wrong, and deals go wrong because of someone's ego, right? So we do come across, you know, visions as well that have done that transformative bit. They have moved from vision to project, and now it's a case of, are we having the right the conversation? Who are we having the conversation with? Is it, you know, you, you know, if your project is microwaves and you're pitching to investors that invest in toasters, well, they don't invest in microwaves, right? So you know what I mean. I'm obviously dumbing it down, simplifying it there, because I do that for myself. I like really simple analogies, right? Um, so it's a lot of that. Then when we come across something that is an actual project, a real project, it's okay. So where have you been going for the money? Who have you been asking? What conversations have you been having? Have you got any recordings of any of these pitches that you've done that we can kind of look at and analyze? And we've got in the background, and you know a lot of them, Aaron, but in the background, in the team that we have behind us, I mean, we've got some of the best people in the world on communication. I mean, you talk about Lee Tony Ware, for example. You talk about the Joseph McGuire's, right? All these kind of people that we would, you know, be looking to bring to bear when it comes to communication. How are you communicating your project? And that's very often where it goes wrong. Great friend of ours, and collaborator and partner of ours in many different projects in many different respects, Ernest Papadonianis in Florida, often talks about how when he gets projects, and we look at projects together all the time, they're super technical, super technical. And I mean, the investor doesn't know, nor do they care, right? And that tends to happen with a lot of projects where the leader, they have a real project, they have a very real project, and they go into the science or they go into the engineering, and they don't go into the finances, they don't go into the business, right? Which is what the investor wants to talk about. So you know, there's a lot in it, and it's a very wide spectrum, you know. And the challenge sometimes is, um, I go to the old saying of, you know, you can't save every puppy in the pound, you know. And sometimes we do have to tell people to, you know, we've tried to help you, we've given you advice, and I don't know how many times. I mean, Aaron, if I was paid for every bit of advice I've ever given in this, right, I'd be able to fund all these projects myself, Okay, right. So we give away a lot. I mean, we run events, we run live webinars, our live streams on LinkedIn nearly every week. We take an odd week off here and there, but most weeks of the year we'll be running these live streams. We run events where we bring experts from all over the world. Nobody gets paid for any of that, right? We give away so much for free. Uh, there was a time where I was doing a lot myself one-to-one, and we had to move to a model where we could do events and stuff so we could reach more people. But we give a hell of a lot away for free, and sometimes we do just have to tell people, look, just you go do your thing. I hope you're successful, but we have to send them away, and we have to filter down to that 3%.
From bouncing from thing to thing through your business entrepreneurial career to end up here, do you regret or wish anything that could have gotten you to the stage quicker?
If I could go back in time, would I do things different at certain stages of my life? Yeah, absolutely, 100% I would. Yeah, there are certain things I would do differently. But do I regret any of the things I've done? No, I don't. I messed up. I've done things wrong. Um, I've got myself in and out of trouble, but I've got other people into trouble as well. Um, doing things in my early years in business, particularly around the events time and that kind of thing. Um, but I suppose if I was to change the question a little bit, Aaron, and kind of say, what would I tell myself, you know, uh, 15 years ago, it probably would be the bit I've just kind of said there as well. If you're the only one, no one can do it, right? I remember saying to a guy who was a good bit younger than me, um, and he was starting out in a business, and I said, remember one thing, I said, you can do absolutely anything. I said, there's not a single thing on this planet that you cannot do. I said, you can do absolutely anything, but I said, you cannot do everything. And that's if I was to go back in time to say 18-year-old me or 16-year-old me or whatever age me pre-20s, um, that's probably what I tell myself, you know. So don't regret any of it. But if I had that locked down, that would have stood to me through certain times. But do I regret any of it? No, I don't.
What advice would you give someone so they have to endure the school of hard knocks to get to their level of success?
Um, Pay the tuition fees, right, for the school of hard knocks, right? Uh, but what I would say is pay for pay for extra classes, right? Pay for extra classes in the school of hard knocks. And what I mean by that is look for look for the graduates, right? And pay them to teach it. And when I say pay, like you can pay with collaboration, you can pay with money, you can pay with service, you can pay with there's several ways to pay. I'm not necessarily talking about pay these people in money. Um, Look for those who have graduated from the school of hard knocks, right? Look for the graduates, pay them to teach you, okay? Because what most people do, and this is why the school of hard knocks, the school of hard knocks, right? Um, School of hard knocks, if you do it right, isn't really all that hard. If you do it right, okay. What I think most people and what I did, right, and I'm because this is coming from me internally out. This isn't a judgment on other people because this is what I did, right, in the school of hard knocks. I enrolled in the school of hard knocks and never turned up to a single class. So you can imagine what the test was like at the end of the semester. You know, now I passed them all, right? I passed them all, and by God, did I learn? Did I learn? And I got a master's in the School of Hard Knocks, right? But if I had turned up to the classes, the tests would have been a breeze, an absolute breeze. And the tests are the things that come at us in life, the things that come at us in our business, the hard times, all the rest of it. If I had turned up to the classes, those tests would have been easy. But I didn't turn up to the classes, so they weren't. And that's why oftentimes it feels like the school of hard knocks. Turn up to the classes, and it's not that hard.
What is the dream and legacy you want to leave behind you, Eamonn?
Good question. I haven't thought about that in a while, Aaron. What is the legacy that I want to leave behind me? Look, I suppose the vision is the legacy that I want to leave. And the vision is it's a world where, you know, family farms are secure. They feel safe, right? Yeah, we're talking about projects, we're talking about funding, we're talking about investment, we're talking about all these great things, right? It's all just a means to an end to ensure that that these people that we're looking to serve, these family farmers, are secure and safe, that their kids are secure and safe, and their grandkids and their great grandkids, that inheritance is going to continue, that their legacies, my legacy is their legacies. I mean, if I can help preserve their legacies, that's my legacy. That's the vision, right? So the vision is the legacy.
Wow. Where can we find you, Eamonn?
So you can find us. Well, LinkedIn is where I'm probably most active, right? So just search Eamonn Walsh on LinkedIn. You should find me. You can find us on Statera Agri, STATERAAGRIA. Yeah, stateraagri.com, right? That's the parent company of Get Funded. So you'll find us there. There is a new platform coming as well, which will be getfunded.club. That's coming on soon. That's not up yet. You'll be able to find us there. There's a lot of exciting stuff going to be happening on that. But LinkedIn is probably your best bet. I mean, everything we do is on LinkedIn. Connect with me directly on my account. Keep an eye on events that are coming up and live streams that we have coming up and who we've got coming on and all that great stuff. It's all shared there. So that's probably the best place to find us.
Eamonn, thank you so much, man. It's been a blast and exciting, and I look forward to seeing what you're gonna do in this project, in this world.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for listening to the Aron O'Dowd Show, where the world's best stories are told. If you like, please post a review or subscribe to the show. To find out more, contact us at aronodowd.com. That's ARONODOWD.com. We're always ready to share another magnificent tale from the world's best storytellers. So stay tuned and rock on.